Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
As we speak, New York City is about to begin painting the words Black Lives Matter on Fifth Avenue in front of Trump Tower. That's a live shot of Fifth Avenue. Donald Trump complained about that on Twitter today, calling the words Black Lives Matter, quote, a symbol of hate. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio responded directly to Trump, saying, here's what you don't understand. Black people built Fifth Avenue and so much of this nation for which they have never been justly compensated. We are honoring them. The fact that you see it as denigrating your street is the definition of racism. Also today, Donald Trump threatened to veto a defense spending bill that includes military pay raises because it contains, at this point, an amendment by Senator Elizabeth Warren, which has bipartisan support, to change the names of military bases named after Confederate soldiers who committed treason and waged a losing war against the United States of America to preserve slavery. This has always been a simple issue for me. I've always been opposed to monuments to Confederates who committed treason and fought to preserve slavery. I didn't think I needed to read another article about the subject because my mind had been made up so many years ago, and I hadn't really seen many new angles on the subject in a long time. And then came Caroline Randall Williams' stunning op-ed piece in Sunday's New York Times under the arresting headline, "You want a Confederate monument? My body is a Confederate monument." Caroline Randall Williams has been educated at two of the oldest and richest universities in the world, Harvard and Oxford. She is a teacher who has taught in two of our poorest states, Mississippi and West Virginia. She is also an award-winning poet, and her article in the Times combines the emotional power of poetry with precise prose that is, at the same time, excruciatingly painful and brilliantly illuminating. It is the most powerful piece of writing about Confederate monuments that I have ever read. I'm going to read some of this article before Caroline Randall Williams joins our discussion. And I warn you that some of this is deeply, deeply shocking and painful because slavery is and always should be deeply shocking. Caroline Randall Williams wrote, "I have rape-colored skin. My light brown blackness is a living testament to the rules, the practices, the causes of the Old South. If there are those who want to remember the legacy of the Confederacy, if they want monuments, well, then my body is a monument. My skin is a monument. I am a black Southern woman, and of my immediate white male ancestors, all of them were rapists. My very existence is a relic of slavery and Jim Crow. I am the descendant of black women who were domestic servants and white men who raped their help. White Southern men, my ancestors, took what they wanted from women they did not love over whom they had extraordinary power and then failed to claim their children. My body and blood are a tangible truth of the South and its past. The black people I come from were owned by the white people I come from. The white people I come from fought and died for their lost cause. And I ask you now, who dares to tell me to celebrate them? Who dares to ask me to accept their mounted pedestals? The man-made monuments must come down. I defy any sentimental Southerner to defend our ancestors to me. I am quite literally made of the reasons to strip them of their laurels. Caroline Randall Williams joins us next. The dream version of the Old South never existed. Any manufactured monument to that time in that place tells half a truth at best. The ideas and ideals it purports to honor are not real. Those are the words of Caroline Randall Williams in her extraordinary article in the New York Times entitled, "You Want a Confederate Monument? My Body is a Confederate Monument." Joining us now is Caroline Randall Williams, writer in residence at Vanderbilt University. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I've been so eager to talk to you from the moment I first held your article in my hands, reading the first sentences. It is just so arresting, as I think you know, as a writer. It's not something anyone can turn away from. It's a concept I have not heard advanced before, that you are yourself a Confederate monument. When did you begin to see it and think that way?
I think that the idea really came from, the question of the monuments as somebody who grew up in Tennessee and then went to school in Mississippi for graduate school. And I also did Teach for America in Mississippi. So the monuments are everywhere. And you think, how can they not have been torn down yet? And then I actually started to think about, the descendants of Nazis and how the German, this sort of German public stance on their monuments has been so to put them in their rightful place in museums and never forget and not dignify them, but utilize them as a tool to remember what not to do. And one of the most powerful elements of that is the descendants of former Nazi soldiers renouncing their ancestors. And I thought, why are there no Southerners doing this? And then I thought, I have Confederate ancestors. I will do it. Because I'm a black woman and I will lead the way like we always do.
I want to read you something that Donald Trump retweeted, a video of Mitch McConnell saying this. And this is Mitch McConnell's words. Americans know that an imperfect nation built by imperfect heroes is still the most perfect union the world has ever seen. And when the dust settles, it is never, never the mobs or bullies whom we honor. What is your reaction to that?
Apart from the sort of staggering hypocrisy, I think putting the Confederate soldiers within the framework of any language about American heroism is fundamentally inaccurate speaking in the first place. The Confederate soldiers were not Americans at the time that they were fighting on behalf of the Confederate States of America. They had declared themselves in revolt against the United States, which makes them American enemies, not American heroes in the first place. And I think that to me is sort of the mind-boggling rewriting. If you want to talk about rewriting history, people say taking down the monuments is rewriting history. I say calling Confederate soldiers who were treasonous traitors to their country American heroes. I think that is a rewriting of history.
Having grown up in the South around these monuments your whole life, are you at a point where you are surprised that it is finally happening, or surprised that it took so long and you expected it to happen sooner, that we're seeing so many of them come down?
I think I'm interested to see what it yields beyond just taking them down. In Mississippi, taking it down doesn't mean anything until they actually take it all the way down, not just move it to someplace else. And so I think if we actually get them down, it'll mean some laws were rewritten, and that's a real change. And I yearn for it. That's all I can say. I hope that America can figure out how to actually enact necessary change. And I think that we're in a time of revolution and evolution, and so maybe it will work.
It is Thursday, the 2nd of July of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, I just came across the transom a little bit ago. It looks like Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested. I hope Bill Barr does not visit the jail they're taking her to, because she'll end up dead, and they'll call it a suicide somehow. The security cameras will mysteriously not be working. People who are tasked with checking in on her will suddenly not be checking up on her, and there'll be a window in which she will kill herself, they say. So that's something that's weird. It looks like Mary Trump is going to be able to publish her book, and that came through late yesterday. So we'll be able to read things that most of us already know, but it's good to be reminded. Yes, it is. So we have a full day here. We got the jobs report coming in. Looks like we're doing great. The economy's doing great. Yeah, it's sort of like, Trump's going to go out there and start crowing about this jobs report, which is a bit like, patting yourself on the back for throwing a bunch of water on a house fire, and the house fire is still going on. Yeah, I threw some water on the house fire. Look, that little corner over there, before the water got vaporized into steam, it held it back a little bit. Held it back a little bit. So, yeah, this jobs report is a little bit like that. It's also a little bit like, we lost how many millions upon millions upon millions of jobs, and now we've brought back a few 100,000? God, we're doing great, aren't we? Aren't we? All right. Well, we got to 50,000 people infected in a day here in the United States? Wow. And where is it? I'm trying to think. Australia. They went down to 0. And they're like, they want to impeach some public officials because their count has gone up to 87 for the whole country. We got 50,000 in a day. They had around 80, 87, and they're just fit to be tied. So here, our leadership is just as much concerned about 50,000 people being infected by a pandemic in a day as they do about sanctioning Russia for killing our U.S. troops at 100,000 K a pop. Wow. Kind of makes people want to go in and kill U.S. service people if you're going to get 100K. Boy, if you got 2, then that's 200K. Okay, so it's all a hoax. Trump doesn't believe the intelligence was actionable. Well, of course he doesn't believe it's actionable. Our intelligence gave it to him, and if he acted on it, he would get in big trouble from his boss. And his boss is the guy that's holding, the sort of Damocles over his head. I am not joking. Trump fears for his life. If he is not president of the United States, he might not be long for this earth. He made a deal with the devil, and the devil is Vladimir Putin. And Putin has convenient, and I've trademarked the term convenient, by the way, Putin has convenient ways of, getting rid of people, the convenient heart attack. The convenient mugging in one of your Trump hotels. The convenient, what else? The convenient polonium poisoning. And the one I really love is the convenient 5-story fall from a 5-story condo floor, moving a piano, and you don't own a piano or have a 5-story condo. How'd that happen? It was convenient, now wasn't it? And that happens a lot. Like I said, Putin has his ways, and they're so very convenient. So Trump fears for his life. It wasn't a horse's head at the foot of his bed as an offer that he couldn't refuse. It was something a little bit more personal. Indeed. So the only thing keeping Trump alive, and I'm not joking, I believe this to be true. Why else would he go to the extent that he does? This man fears for his life. He got himself into a pickle, and he's not going to be able to crawl out of the brine. So we got that going for us. And will an election right this ship? We hope so. It looks like both China and now Russia have, leaders for life. Trump wants that to happen here, too, so we'll see how our elections go. Yeah, Vlad's out there touting, like 87% approval. People want to just tear up our Constitution and let me serve 2 more terms. Isn't that grand? Yeah, what a sham election. No wonder Trump thinks he's going to have some sort of viability in November. Because Vlad's been doing this for how long? Since what? Since really the 90s. Every time the law says, okay, your time's up, he is able to change the law. And people just love him, apparently. Yeah, they do. Jeez. There is a big-time protest movement, anti-Vlad movement in Russia, but it is fairly well suppressed. Ask Pussy Riot. They'll tell you. Okay, so what else? What else could be bothering us now? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because at the top, we had that great opinion piece, that essay about black monuments and black bodies being monuments to the Confederacy. At the same time that Trump is calling Black Lives Matter, the painting of Black Lives Matter in front of his place on Fifth Avenue, as a hate symbol. It's hate. He's such a effing racist. Black Lives Matter is a statement of hate. All right. So he's going to veto a defense appropriations bill because Pocahontas? What is this guy's problem? He is such a racist effer. Because Elizabeth Warren has an amendment in there about renaming military bases that have been named after Confederate traitors. There's no heroes in the Confederacy. Please. Oh, yeah, it's your heritage? Go to a museum. All right? Maybe even one of those little weird storefront ones. Little tiny place. Anyway, Trump is using racism and racist rhetoric, calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas again, because, we're going to destroy our history. Well, what kind of history do you think you want to save, you racist? Yeah. McEnany says, well, if that's racist, well, then 56% of America is racist. This is not 56. You got the numbers wrong, lady. It's more like 44% are racist and 56% are not. Please, get the numbers right. And if you really wanted to be much more accurate, there's a toxic third that will always be the most toxic. They are not the majority, but they are a loud squeaky wheel. And I'm tired of them getting the grease. I'm tired of it. I think it's time to throw that wheel away. The whole axle, too. The whole construct of it needs to be thrown away, and we need to build a better car that's quiet, energy efficient, and gets everybody to their destination, not just a select few. How do you like that metaphor? Wow, it just came to me. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way. Oh, one other thing. Do not diss the grit. I know grits aren't necessarily endemic to Louisiana, but we're talking that whole seaboard. Okay, come on. Grits are big in North Carolina, and there's a lot of jambalaya in North Carolina, too. Just saying. On the rest of the menu, Los Angeles cut funding, I think they means defunded, the LAPD by $150 million and reduced the number of officers to a level not seen in more than a decade. Wow, wait till the union finds out. A federal judge dealt a setback to a key Trump policy limiting asylum, and it couldn't have come at a better time. And Novartis is ordered to pay $678 million to settle a lawsuit over a sham speaker program that bribed doctors to prescribe its products. Well, seems like the same old. It does. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Khashoggi's fiancee hopes the Turkish trial of 20 Saudi officials opening tomorrow, Friday, will reveal fresh evidence on his brutal death. And maybe we'll find out where they hid his body parts. Maybe. And Mexican labor attorney and independent union leader Susana Prieto was released from jail hours after the July 1st start of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement trade deal. And you can thank the Democrats for that. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, by the way. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link and that social media scroll that is at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then find the link to our Patreon page. And I just have to give another big shout out to one of our contributors. And you know who you are. And we all do here at Netroots Radio. Thank you so much for your generous increase in your monthly contribution to Netroots Radio. That really does help us a lot in paying our bills and flying under the radar. If the rest of you out there, or some of you, if you could send the cost of an espresso type coffee drink our way, that generous contribution helps us pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue our civic duty as Resistance Radio, because the founders originally intended that, They did originally. And we continue to do this for almost 10 years now, and it's because of the generosity of folks like you and our guy who increased his monthly contribution. Thank you so much for that. Wow. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. And Tom takes care of that, and we thank Tom for doing that. Thank you, Tom. Also, Tom's got some jingles coming our way, a few more little interstitials, too, as we like to put it. Thank you, Tom, for all of that. He's a hard worker, and he's got a lot on his plate. So thank you. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, do so at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary. Are they still diaries? I hope so. They'll always be a diary to me. That's how we can tell who we are. Anyway, I post that diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that posted up on social media. Not Facebook. No, I don't do that. Kelly will do that for me now. until I am no longer suspended by Facebook. But as soon as I serve this 30-day sentence, there'll be another 30-day, because that's how the right-wingers out here work. That's how they work the algorithm. And apparently, Facebook doesn't care. Those right-wingers continue to spread their disinformation, hate, propaganda, lies, the whole kit and caboodle. And the corrections are considered hate speech. Yeah, that's how it works. Thanks, Mark. And I hope you lose your lawsuit in Hawaii, and you're not able to buy up, or actually, I think, confiscate all those tracts of land that were passed down by inheritance. They just happen to be in tracts of land that you own. I hope you get kicked off that island. I really do. Go move on to Peter Thiel's island that he's building on the blood of millennials, because that's the fountain of youth. Yeah, indeed. Where was I? If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. There is no podcast platform called etc. As far as I know. They probably should, because then they get a lot of people trying to get podcasts off of etc. At least if you're listening to this show. Boy, I say it a lot. Okay, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Anonymous worker bees at the AP bring us this first offering. City leaders voted yesterday, Wednesday, to slash the Los Angeles Police Department budget. Oh, it's the budget. Okay. By $150 million, reducing the number of officers to a level not seen for more than a decade amid nationwide demands to shift money away from law enforcement agencies during America's reckoning over police brutality and racial injustice. Well, good. About 2/3 of the funding was earmarked for police overtime and will be used to provide services and programs for communities of color, including a youth summer jobs program. The City Council's 12-2 vote will drop the number of officers from 9,988 as of last month to about 9,757 by next summer, abandoning a goal of 10,000 officers touted by political leaders and only reached in 2013. 10,000. That's a whole city. This is a step forward, supporting minority communities in ways in which they deserve, with respect, dignity, and an even playing field, Councilman Curran Price said. Oh, I actually saw that, I believe it's Denver, that for a lot of the calls for people who are having mental crises, oftentimes cops get sent and then the cops kill that person who's in a mental crisis, because I don't know, that's what they're taught to do, shoot first, ask questions later. So Denver is sending, and I made this suggestion a few decades ago. How about instead of sending a cop, you send some social workers, people who are experts in this particular kind of thing? Why would you send a cop? Where's the crime? Crime for being crazy? Please. So they're doing that, for calls that are relatively, I guess everything can be violent ultimately, but, for nonviolent calls where people are in distress. Don't send a cop. They're not psychologists. They're not trained to be. They're trained to be bullies and command with a commanding voice. Okay? That's what they're for. There was no immediate comment from the LAPD. However, Police Chief Moore tweeted last night, Wednesday, that, quote, "We remain as resolved as ever to the conversation around reform and continue to walk forward together," end quote. faggot of the Associated Press, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A federal judge has knocked down a cornerstone border policy of the Trump administration that denies asylum to people who travel through other countries to reach the U.S.-Mexico border without first seeking protection in those countries. Really? U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly ruled that authorities violated federal rulemaking procedures by not seeking public feedback before putting the policy into effect in July of 2019. The impact of Kelly's ruling is diminished by a coronavirus pandemic-related measure that was imposed in March to quickly expel people who cross the border illegally and block asylum seekers at official crossings. In May, the administration extended the measure indefinitely, relying on a little-known public health law to prevent the spread of the disease. Oh, so now COVID is okay. It's not a hoax. It's not there just to make Trump look bad. Yeah. I smell the blood of Stephen Miller behind this. The administration could appeal. Asked to comment yesterday, the Justice Department said in a statement that the court's ruling was based on procedural claims and not about the policy's substance. Really? Yeah, well, Capone wasn't arrested for murder, but for taxes. Procedural things. The Homeland Security Department said it strongly disagreed with the decision and was considering options because they're the Gestapo. Of course, their options is to try to make brown and black people suffer. Kelly, who was appointed by Donald Trump, ruled Tuesday in Washington that Homeland Security officials failed to justify why they avoided seeking and responding to public comments as required under rulemaking because the public hates the idea of putting brown and black babies in icebox baby gulags. Though I'm in a bubble so that I can get through the curated material here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, I couldn't help but notice a news item from a bit before this morning. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear the Trump administration's bid to keep a seal on those confidential materials in the Mueller investigation. And, that's all but ensures that we won't see anything about the Mueller report that we should be seeing before the election. Though, what more do we need to see? I mean, still. But I just look at this as the Roberts Court signing off on more of the enabling acts. The Roberts Court. Sort of like the People's Court back there in Germany, back there in the day. Look that up. Yeah, and I'm not talking about a TV show. I'm talking about the People's Court with Friedlander. My God. Okay, this next offering here, or this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, is by Larry Neumeister from the Associated Press. Novartis Pharmaceutical Corp. will pay $678 million to the U.S. government and various states to settle a lawsuit over a sham speaker program that distributed cash, expensive dinners, and other treats to induce doctors to prescribe its products, federal authorities announced Wednesday. Induced? I call that bribing. Of course, it's nothing new. I mean, they used to do that back in the day, and they actually made rules and laws against it. The settlement of the lawsuit was announced by acting Manhattan U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss, who said the company splurged on speaking fees, exorbitant meals, and top-shelf alcohol that were nothing more than bribes to get doctors across the country to prescribe Novartis' drugs. Messages seeking comment were left with lawyers for Novartis, which is part of a Swiss drug manufacturer, Novartis International AG. Vas Narshaman, chief executive of Novartis, said in a statement that the company has already changed with new leadership, a stronger culture, and a more comprehensive commitment to ethics embedded at the heart of our company. Well, where were those ethics embedded before, one might ask? With these agreements, we mark an important milestone in our journey to build trust with society as we continue reimagining medicine to improve and extend lives all around the world. Reimagining medicine that costs so much that only a few can afford it. Is that what you mean? The settlement resolves a 2011 whistleblower lawsuit accusing Novartis of violating the Federal False Claims Act and the anti-kickback statute. You know, the rules and regulations that Trump has been fighting strenuously to get rid of. I wonder why. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The night of September 11th, President George W. Bush addressed the nation.
Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America.
The next day, Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle, a Democrat, said Congress stood united behind the president in condemning the attacks.
The world should know that the members of both parties in both houses stand united in this.
There was a lot of inter-party unity right after 9/11. The messages that the public was receiving were not inherently politicized. And there was a moment in which that could have happened around COVID. And to my surprise, it didn't.
Skylar Cranmer is a political scientist at The Ohio State University. His team analyzed tens of thousands of tweets sent out by members of Congress, the idea being to determine how and when COVID-19 became a politically divided issue. Cranmer says the split happened quickly. From mid-January to the end of March, Democrats sent nearly twice as many tweets about COVID-19 as did Republicans. And the two parties spoke about the virus differently, too. Democrats frequently used words like health, testing, and leave, as in sick leave. Republicans tended to favor words like together, China, and business. The findings are in the journal Science Advances. Cranmer says this division among political elites has serious consequences. It fractures the response of everyday Americans to the threat. If instead both parties had been united, he says,
the cues that would be sent to individuals would almost certainly have led to more consistent behavior changes on the part of the public and probably slowed the spread of disease and probably saved lives.
As Anthony Fauci said on a June 25th Facebook Live event with the Sacramento Press Club and Cap Radio,
it should not be a political issue. It is purely a public health issue. Forget the politics. Look at the data.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with flood water, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1822. That was the day that Denmark Vesey was hung for his role in allegedly plotting a slave rebellion in South Carolina. Vesey had been born into slavery in St. Thomas in the Caribbean. From there, he was brought to Charleston, South Carolina. He won the lottery and was able to purchase his freedom at the age of 32. Now a free man, Vesey worked as a skilled carpenter. He became a founder of a black congregation of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston. 4 years after it opened, authorities grew uneasy about the potential of the church to foster unrest among those under slavery. In response, they closed the church. Vesey and others began to organize black resistance to slavery. An informant revealed the plans before the uprising could take place. South Carolina authorities acted swiftly. Vesey stood trial and was found guilty. He was executed along with 35 of his supporters. The AME Church was burned to the ground. Hysterical white leaders passed harsh new slave codes aimed at thwarting any future plots. Since his death, historians have debated the true extent of the plot and the evidence put forth at his trial. Vesey's name became a rallying cry in the fight against slavery. The church members continued to meet in secret. After the Civil War, the church formally took the name Emmanuel AME. The church became a symbol in the fight for black civil rights. In 2015, a white 21-year-old gunman murdered 9 people at the Emmanuel Church in a vicious hate crime.
Moses said, "Let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Another day, another record. Yeah, there were a record number of new coronavirus cases reported in the United States on Wednesday, with a Washington Post tally putting the increase at 52,788. Johns Hopkins data put the figure at 50,203. Regardless, more than 50,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported on Wednesday alone. At least 5 states, Arizona, California, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, all set one-day records. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom announced an order to close for 3 weeks restaurant dining rooms, bars, and other indoor facilities in 19 counties that encompasses 72% of the state's population. One infectious disease expert warned that the U.S. was facing the perfect storm for a COVID-19 spike, with people traveling for the July 4th weekend and many businesses newly reopening. Now, because Friday, July 3rd, is a legal holiday this year, the June jobs report was released on Thursday instead. Experts warned in advance that this jobs report will likely look great on paper, and it does, as the U.S. added a record 4.8 million jobs in June. That brings the official unemployment rate down to 11.1%. But those numbers are deceiving, because with the resurgence of the virus and a fresh wave of shutdowns, the reality of the job market is certainly much bleaker. But because of a lag in the federal data, those numbers are the results of a survey conducted through the middle of June and don't capture the current devastation. So economists tell us those numbers should therefore be taken with a whole stockpile of salt. Oh, and one more piece of bad news. The number of permanent job losers continued to rise, increasing by 588,000 to 2.9 million in June. The number of unemployed people who were on temporary layoff decreased by 4.8 million in June to 10.6 million, following a decline of 2.7 million in May. And we also learned that another 1.4 million people filed initial unemployment claims in June as well. So much winning. After complaints about the briefings received by Congress on the Russia bounty intel, on Thursday, top intelligence officials, including CIA Director Gina Haspel, are briefing the Gang of Eight Thursday morning on intelligence suggesting that Russia paid Taliban soldiers to kill Americans. That briefing is happening at 11:30 a.m., interestingly, the same time that Donald Trump is speaking on one thing or another. A group of former George W. Bush administration and campaign officials has started a super PAC aiming at disgruntled Republicans to get them to support the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. The group is using the name 43 Alumni for Biden, and they say they, quote, seek to unite and mobilize a community of historically Republican voters who are dismayed and disappointed by the damage done to our nation by Donald Trump's presidency. So Trump's pal Vladimir will likely hold on to power for the conceivable future. Russian voters allegedly approved constitutional changes that will let Putin hold on to power until 2036. The voting was extended for a full week to boost turnout without creating crowds that could have increased the risk of spreading the coronavirus. Kremlin critics said the government used the unprecedented long voting period to manipulate the result. Either way, it looks like Vladimir Putin isn't going anywhere. But a statue of Stonewall Jackson is gone. In Richmond, Virginia, authorities on Wednesday removed the statue as momentum builds to end the public display of monuments to figures prominent in the Confederacy. The statue was one of 4 honoring Confederate soldiers on Monument Avenue in the state capitol, which also served as the capital of the Confederacy during the Civil War. Protests have gathered nightly in the area since the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody inspired nationwide protests against police brutality and racial injustice. The protesters have been calling for removing the Confederate statues because they are symbols of racism and the fight to preserve slavery. In early June, protesters toppled part of a monument to Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy. A spokesman for Richmond's mayor said the city would, quote, remove as many monuments as we can, as soon as we can. So while that's a good sign, the Senate appears to be moving backwards. On Wednesday, the Senate stripped language from the National Defense Authorization Act that would have required presidential campaigns to report offers of foreign election help. Seriously? Donald Trump on Wednesday criticized New York City for its plan to paint Fifth Avenue, where Trump Tower is located, with the words Black Lives Matter, which he called a, quote, symbol of hate. Trump tweeted that painting the name of the anti-racism movement would result in, quote, denigrating this luxury avenue and would further antagonize police. The comments come just days after Trump retweeted a video showing a supporter shouting white power at pro-Black Lives Matter protesters in Florida. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said his government was shifting $1 billion out of the police budget to use for civilians who can better handle some work that police had been handling poorly. He also said some of the money would go to youth incentives. And finally, a New York appellate judge on Wednesday lifted a restraining order to allow publisher Simon & Schuster to move forward with its plan to release a tell-all book by Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump. A lower court had put the late July release on hold pending a decision on whether a non-disclosure agreement Mary Trump signed as part of a settlement of Fred Trump's estate prevented her from writing the book Too Much and Never Enough: How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. But the appellate judge ruled that the privacy agreement didn't involve publisher Simon & Schuster, so it can continue distributing the book pending a decision on the core issue of whether Mary Trump violated the confidentiality agreement by writing the book in the first place. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook, a Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expected to be a tad warmer than yesterday, maybe in the mid-80s, maybe a tad more. We were in the upper 70s, low 80s yesterday for most of the day. Sunny conditions will prevail throughout the day with winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear to partly cloudy overnight with lows in the mid-50s, and the winds will continue out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And sunny skies expected tomorrow with similar temperature, mid-80s. And the winds will shift ever so slightly out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed coronavirus cases here in Jackson County of Southern Oregon. And I should remind folks, we are now one of the states who have reduced our testing. And yet, confirmed cases have now again gone up overnight. We've gone up 20 in the last several days. We went up, what? Wow, looks like another 3 or 4 just overnight. And that's with reduced testing. And we are not reporting deaths by coronavirus because that's the county's decision. Why would they do that? Well, they voted for Trump. You figure it out. Pollen, grass pollen actually, is very high, is actually just high, not very high, but just high right outside the window of the mothership here in Rogue River. The air quality index in the Rogue River Valley region is good at 26 parts per million, but that daytime UV index is very high at 9. So slather on the SP50, just do it. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.02 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They do. London is 68 and partly cloudy. Paris is 71 and partly cloudy. Rome is 91 and sunny with a heat advisory that could shut down critical infrastructure during a pandemic. Kyiv is 89 and fair. Kabul is 80 degrees and fair, with a few bounties out on U.S. servicemen's heads, just so you know. Hong Kong is 81 and mostly cloudy, with a very draconian security bill that's been put into effect by mainland China. Cracking heads, because that's part of security now. So I guess they're going to have a forecast of cracked heads. They will. Tokyo is 76 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 62 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 and mostly cloudy with a fog advisory that should be lifted as they get closer to noon. And New York, New York is a lovely 80 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Ali Kukakokaman and Yassim Diekman of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Turkish court will open the trial tomorrow, Friday, of 20 Saudi officials indicted over the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a step his fiancee hopes will shed more light on the death and reveal where his body was hidden. The indictment by Istanbul prosecutors accuses the former deputy head of Saudi Arabia's General Intelligence, Ahmad al-Asari, a former royal court advisor, former royal court advisor Saud al-Qahtani, of instigating premeditated murder with monstrous intent. It says 18 other defendants carried out the killing by suffocating Khashoggi, who had grown increasingly critical of Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. All 20 defendants are expected to be tried in absentia.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Dana Beth Solomon of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Mexican labor attorney and independent union leader Susana Prieto was released from jail yesterday, Wednesday, after her arrest nearly a month ago on charges of inciting violence at a workers' protest. A judge's order for her release came hours after the July 1st of the USMCA trade deal. Prieto's release was contingent on her paying $2,911, that's U.S. dollars, but she'll pay it in pesos, for damages and her agreement to not travel abroad for the next 30 months. She was also ordered to reside in her home in nearby Chihuahua State. Prieto was still charged with crimes against public servants, including threats and inciting a riot linked to a worker protest outside a labor board in the city of Matamoros last March. She has denied the charges. U.S. union leaders and Democratic lawmakers had called for her release ahead of the start of the new regional trade deal, fearing her detention was a warning sign of Mexico's challenges in meeting its labor obligations. One of the USMCA's central aims is to improve labor rights and union independence in Mexico. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on. And we'll meet up tomorrow for, oh gosh, don't we deserve it? Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.